Welcome to Salon TV. And today I am here with the brilliant social activist, author, and founder of the MeToo movement, Tarana Burke, to talk about her amazing new book. You're going to love this book. You need to go, as soon as this interview is, you should go order it, which is it's already an Oprah selection, Unbound. How you doing today?
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Pleasure's all mine. Happy Pub Day. So, um, first and foremost, I'm extremely inspired by your work, and I want to say congratulations on the new book and the power of the movement you created. Can you start out by telling our readers and our viewers what does Me Too mean to you in 2021?
Well, it means the same to me in 2021 as it did in 2005 and 2006. I think people miss, because of the viral hashtag, people miss that Me Too is essentially about healing and about action. And it's about a way to build community first between survivors, right? Between people who have experienced the same or similar kind of violence, seeing each other, finding community with each other. So it's just like any other reason why you would say Me Too. I found myself in different spaces where people would share about what happened to them, and everybody in the room or half the people in the room could say, yeah, that happened to me too. And ultimately it was a situation where I couldn't say Me Too that made me realize the power, how powerful those words actually were.
And I guess the reason why I framed the question like that is because still extremely powerful movement, and then dealing with the horrors of the last administration, the horror story of the last administration, on top of the pandemic and everything shutting down. I really wanted to ask you how can people support survivors, or what is the best way to support survivors now that the world is slowly starting to open back up? I know people are like still a little bit apprehensive about meeting up and going in big groups and spaces, but what can people do now?
I really appreciate that question, because I think that there's not enough attention has been paid to the really specific impact that this pandemic has had on survivors. Like, this is a moment where people have been complaining about having to be inside and having to be isolated, but being inside and isolated is actually more dangerous for so many people who deal with, intimate partner and sexual violence in their homes, children who are dealing with child sexual abuse and can't get away from it. And so it is one of the ways you can support survivors is by being keenly aware of the unique situation so many people have found themselves in over the last year, and the lack of resources that exist for them. It really is, it's heartbreaking when people ask me, well, what can I do? There's not a lot you can do for somebody who is locked in their home with their abuser. But if we can put resources into the places where they can go to get help, that's one of the ways that we can support people like post pandemic. But also, it's kind of just understanding what people are up against. This moment in time has shine, has been like a spotlight on so many different problems in society, and this is another one that is illuminated just how serious this problem is, even more so, I think, than the hashtag.
Your writing is beautiful. So let's be clear on that. And I was lucky enough, before I became a writer, I luckily got a chance to meet the late great Maya Angelou. And one of the things she said, and I shouldn't say I wasn't a writer. My career didn't really start yet, and I was still trying to find my voice. And one of the things I took from her was, in memoir, the power of identifying those universal truths that connect us. And reading your book, I felt like so many things aligned just with me and my journey. And even though we're from two different spaces with two whole different realities, there's like certain things that just bring us together. And that's one of the most powerful things about Unbound to me. I feel like you're dropping these gems, but you're not preaching at us. It's not didactic. You allowing your story to do the work. So I'm going to assume that was probably part of the goal. And I want to know, what was your writing process like in regards to what you decided to keep in and take out?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be really deep and profound and be like, that was what I was really trying to get at. But in truth, I think the reason why that was the end result is because at the end of the day, human to human, that is the reality. Like we get really caught up in the titles and the experiences, and those are important, right? Who the experiences that shaped us, where we come from, all of those things are important. But when you strip that all away, how those things affect us are as human beings, and that affects how we show up in the world. And that's where our commonalities kind of come from. And I think that's why people can relate to it, right? Because at the end of the day, you a man, I'm a woman, blah blah blah. We come from different, all of the things you're saying, but the way something pierces you in your spirit, the way something makes you feel, the way something sits on your heart, that doesn't matter. And I think that's where people will connect. What I really tried to do in the writing process was just tell the truth. And I mean, I think that's what everybody tries to do. But when I'm saying that, I mean like the hard truth, right? It's an ugly underbelly that sometimes we don't get to, that we scared to talk about. It's not easy to talk about people thinking you ugly, right? It's not easy to talk about the worst things that ever happened to you in your life, about being abused, being, violence that you experience. But I needed to say it. I needed to say it out loud for myself
Okay.
first and foremost, because there's also something about facing that. It's like facing your fears almost. And then there's another part that's like, if I need to say it for myself, there's somebody else that needs to hear it too.
Okay. I think that's something that people are going to take away as they connect with the project is it's not easy to talk about things that hurt us. It's not easy to always talk about things that we've been through. And it's not easy to even admit and be as transparent with that healing journey. But it's something that but that's also part of the healing. And
Right.
I think a lot of people feel like healing is something that you do and then it stops. They don't really understand that it's just like learning. You work at it every day from
Every
the moment you realize the healing needs to be done
Yep.
into the day we leave this place. So I definitely think you accomplished that. And there's so many other things to unpack. Something that I focus on a lot that I already knew about your story, but I think that everybody needs to know is you were on the ground doing this work for a long time before there were hashtags and virality and whole big Ivy League universities doing studies on what going viral means. So could you talk about some of those experiences?
Yeah, I think differently than other people who are that these viral moments have kind of shaped their work.
Mhm.
Um, for me, the work came first, and then the viral moment propelled that work into the world. And so I've been an organizer most of my life, and I mean really most of my life since I was a teenager. I've been engaged in community work since high school. I was raised in a very conscious family, very conscious about my blackness. African centered family. And so it was really important for me to be connected to community, to do liberation and justice work around community. And then that eventually moved into youth work, youth leadership development, because it's the work that saved me and it helped shape my life. And then that work morphed, it's like little by little as you get older and you kind of pare down on what it is your specialty is. It became really, really clear after a while that I wanted to work with Black girls.
Mhm.
And once I got that clarity, I understood. Once I got that clarity, I was like, this is where I'm going to be. This is the work I want to do. And I got in that world. I saw what the needs were, and the needs were the same as my needs as a kid, right? I saw a bunch of young girls who had experienced sexual violence on top of the other traumas that they had experienced in their communities, right? We forget that, and I'm not trying to tell a traumatic story. Like we are also joyful and full people, but there is a lot of trauma that happens in urban communities that we just normalize, right? I, my mother actually tells a story about the first shootout I experienced when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I was just walking through. It's like a joke in the family. Toronto didn't even duck. That shouldn't be real.
Right.
And that shouldn't be a reality that I was in a shootout at 3 years old, right? But that's trauma that we don't think about. So I kind of that's the life that I decided I wanted, because I wanted to be able to impact young Black girls' lives to make sure that they could even just be a modicum of difference of what I experienced. Felt like liberation work to me. The kind of liberation work I wanted to be engaged in. And that is, the more I connected with young girls who had experienced sexual violence, I knew this is where I had to direct my energy because I knew what it had done to my life.
So take us to that moment when it actually did go viral, when the Me Too hashtag went viral.
Well, I start the book with that moment because I've been asked that question so many times, and I've had to answer it in sound bites for like the last 4 years. Like, well, it was really hard, it was difficult, but da 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 da. But the truth is, I went through it. Right? I am not just because it was viral and I couldn't get my arms around it, but also I'm a black woman. Right? At the time, I was a 44-year-old black woman from the Bronx, up against, and is seemingly up against the world, up against white women in Hollywood, up against famous people, up against even the virality of the hashtag that didn't start with me. And it just felt like I was gonna lose it, and I would never be able to shape the narrative. And it's just been one big lesson for me for the last 4 years because one, I realized very quickly what's meant for me is meant for me. The other thing I realized is that that hashtag is not my work.
Mm.
So the hashtag happened. People still see hashtag Me Too as something that is very different than the Me Too movement, which is the work that I started. And I will never fully regain that narrative. But that's okay. Because what I try to explain to people is if you can't both call me, Tarana Burke, the leader of the movement, the founder of the movement, and say that you believe in my work, and then talk about white women co-opting it and it be because that's what they have is hashtag Me Too. That has nothing to do with what I'm doing. My work is about healing. My work is about action. And my work is about the least of these. It starts with black and brown folks. It starts with black and brown girls. It starts with people who are pushed to the margins. And if you believe that, nobody can take that away. Nobody can change that. That is where we stay. That's where we've been. You can look at interviews. You can look at my track record for the last 4 years. I've been on all kind of shows. I done talked about all kind of things, but the work, the core of the work I've done has been consistent. So I don't worry about who co-opted what, who's saying what, because I mean, honestly, think about it. White people have never prioritized our pain, right? They have never decided, well, let's see what's going on, unless it's something that is going to benefit them.
Yeah.
It's going to sell their newspapers. You know what I'm saying? Like they started thinking about black people, black women, and sexual violence because they had an R. Kelly story to tell, or a Russell Simmons story, or a Bill Cosby story to tell, right? They can attach it to something. But the fact that, but they don't talk about sexual violence in relation to Black Lives Matter, right? Because that's a different story.
Mhm.
Black women have the second highest rate of sexual violence in this country. We also, and black people have the highest rate of adverse experiences with the police. So if you're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, why are you not talking about sexual violence? Because you know what the second highest complaint against police is? Sexual violence. So you do all of that math, that means not only are black women dying at the hands of police, we're also being sexually assaulted at the hands of the police. Look up Daniel Holtzclaw. They don't want to tell that story, right? So it's up to us to tell that story and to do that work.
I think
Sorry, I know I went on a tangent.
it's important too because a lot of times, as powerful as the internet has been, it doesn't really translate unless you're having those real experiences. And I'm not gonna say I get in fights or arguments because I kind of don't really argue, but like I've had tough conversations with people who wake up in the morning, pick up their phone, tweet something like "Black people count too," and then say, "Okay, the work is done. Now I can go out and I'm an activist." And it's
Right.
no activism is blood, sweat, tears.
It's feet to the street.
Proximity to the problem.
That's right.
And if you don't have proximity to these issues, if people can't hit your phone, not for photo ops and things like that, but it's how you're connected, and that's the part that a lot of people miss.
But even like, so you're a writer, right? And I have a lot of friends. I was a journalist at some point too. there's a connection there. If you are a writer, even who is writing about these stories, who is telling a different story, you're important to me because then I can use what you're writing to educate the people who I'm talking about to say, this is what I'm saying. You can tell a deeper story. You can research, and then I can take that and bring that to the young people. And it's like we're connected in that way. But you with your armchair analysis and you tweeting and your hashtagging, that's not helping me. You know, it all I tell people all the time, everything counts. You know, do your little part. If that's all you can do, fine. But then do that and be quiet. Don't like, you know what I'm saying? If all you can do is tweet, go ahead and tweet and then leave the criticism alone.
You know, people on their couches critiquing people who are actually out here helping people. And
It's
it's,
tough.
I applaud you, and you know, like it's also like it's inspired me to dig in deeper on some of the things that I'm working on because you're brave enough to share some of the darkest elements of your personal story, to talk about what you've been through and years you spent blaming yourself, and without without giving too much away, I would like you to talk about how difficult it was to just revisit some things that may not have been easy to revisit.
Yeah, it was hard. And you know what's interesting? So the reason why I was able to write this book for real is because I have journals that go all the way back to 8th grade. I have I've always been my mother encouraged me to journal when I was younger, and I have, you know, journals that's half written in, some of them are filled up. So I think we all do this. I had a story. The story of my life is in my head. And if I had to sit down, I could sort of timeline it out. But when I got into some of the really, really harder stories, and then I went back and I read what I was feeling around that time, what I thought around that time, I thought, oh my God, I never really unpacked this, right? I know the story, I could tell it, I could verbalize it, but I hadn't really unpacked it. And I underestimated what it was going to be like to write it out and unpack it in the moment. And so this was a difficult, it was a difficult process. It was the most difficult creative process I've ever gone through. I started in 2019. I put it down for most of 2020. And quite frankly, we have this book because my editor was like, I mean, do you want to write a book? Because you're going to need to send me some pages. And I got really serious about it, you know, end of last year, because I got, you know, my therapy, got real serious in my therapy. Um, and I also had to have a lot of difficult conversations around writing the book.
Mhm.
You know, I went back to talk to people and revisit some old stuff that I hadn't. People like, why are we talking about this now? I'm like, I'm sorry. I just never, you know, it's been a while. So it was hard. And, you know, they keep promoting this as her first memoir. And in my mind, I'm like, I always wanted to write a series of memoirs like Maya Angelou. But I'm like, I don't know if I can do it again. It's hard. It's definitely hard. Excuse me.
Was any of it healing? Was any of the writing everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Now that's the flip side. The thing is, once you unpack it, though, it's unpacked, and so it's just like any process. It hurt. It really hurt. A lot of the stuff around my mom was really really difficult, and but I needed to. I just needed to get it out. And I think that when you love people, like when you have people in your life, and you love them, we find ways to soften the experiences just so we can live with it, right? Like I know this happened. I know it made me feel this way, but I'm going to let it live in my mind in a particular way just so that I don't have to face the reality of it. And what was healing was that I realized I could face the fullness of what happened, and I can still love my mom. And we can find a new place in our relationship where both of those things could exist. And that alone was incredibly healing, for me, and I think probably for my mom too.
How do you feel? Or what would you say to a person who's going through a similar journey, somebody who's trying to understand that healing process, based on what helps you? Like we talked about therapy, we talked about writing, but what about someone who wants to start that journey?
You know, the healing journey, I try not to be prescriptive, right? Because
I understand.
it's so different for different.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel
But I
you.
will say, but I will say that if it's sometimes like the thing, the trauma that you feel like feels like, I think of it like a house sometimes. Like feels like your house burnt down, right? Which is, I mean, it's such a traumatic thing to even think about. You lose all your worldly possessions and but even when a house burns down, you still have the ground that the house stood on. So regardless of what the brick and mortar that was there, or even the possessions that were inside of the house, you still have ground to build on. And who we are at our core doesn't really change. It doesn't have to change. Like sometimes the violence that we experience, the trauma we experience feels like it can change our alchemy. But that doesn't have to be bad. And so without being like complicated and all extra cerebral, I try to help people understand. Some people say like healing is about you know, you're going to be whole again, and you want to try to be whole again, but also know that you may come back to a completely different person, and that's okay. It's, you've heard that phrase like peace from broken pieces.
Mhm.
Like that's been my experience. I got stuck for a long time because I kept thinking I was failing at the healing because I wasn't feeling a particular way. Like, where's the magic? Where's the thing? Why don't I feel what's. And then it was like, oh, this is it. This is what you get. This is who you're gonna be. And then so it was a sort of a journey to accepting this person with the scars, this person with the trauma. It doesn't go anywhere. Even the ground you build on may be charred from the fire. That may not go anywhere, but you still get to rebuild. And what I've done is I control what I rebuild this time, right? So it's up to me. If it's like, look, it's a beautiful process, and particularly for sexual violence, but I think any kind of violence, and I've been through all kinds of violence. Um, there's a way we lose control, like losing control of yourself, of your body, of your functions in any way. It's debilitating. So every decision I make in my life that I have control of is so precious to me. It's that much more important to me. So yeah, I just revel in being able to make decisions for my life. That's healing for me. Um, I don't know if that's good advice for people, but I just know it's a process, and it's a good process. And it ain't always good, but all of it counts.
Peace from broken pieces is like the thing I think that we need to talk about, because we spend so much time looking for magic and waiting for magic, and not even understanding that again, the work is something that it's a constant.
Yeah.
It's not just a one time thing.
People don't realize the healing is the journey. There's no destination. It's all in the journey. Every day I tell folks, let me tell you, you have to decide every single day when you get up to heal. You have to decide. And there's some days that I decide not to. There's days when I'm just like, I'm not supposed to curse, I'm sorry, but I'm messed up.
Well,
Like this is
this is the internet.
I'm not, but those days when you be like, yo, I'm fucked up. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm crying. Today I'm going to cry. Or I have a girlfriend who I love so much because when I'm going through stuff, she'll say, okay, well, who do you need me to be? you know? And she'll like, I'm gonna give you about 24, 48 hours with this. Do what you need, cry, rant, whatever, and I'm gonna come back and then we're gonna get back on track. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Allow yourself to feel what you need to feel. Give yourself that kind of space. This world of like social media with all these little listicles of like, 10 ways to heal your life. And these are the steps to do. That's not real. It's not, it's gonna look good sometimes. You're gonna feel great, and then you're gonna feel terrible sometimes. But you have to know that when you feel terrible, that's part of it too. And it's okay.
Something that frustrates me is when we talk about a movement as powerful as Me Too, when we talk about survivors, people who feel like they don't assault or they don't relate or they didn't do anything wrong think that they should be exempt from having the conversation. My question for you is as men, as a man who could potentially come across people who talk like this, what should we be saying to them, to people who feel like they're above the conversation?
Yeah, this is such a really important thing, and I think it's not even for men; it's for people, right? Because I've had sisters, women who I've had to say that if you're the kind of woman who sees another woman and will be like, "Look at her, why she got that skirt on?" or "She's so drunk, somebody's gonna end up da da da." If you're that person, you're part of the problem too. I don't think we're going to have a shift in sexual violence until we have a shift in rape culture. And all of us contribute to rape culture. And I think that's the approach we take. Not you could be a perpetrator, you probably harmed somebody, because I think that makes people defensive. But when you can show the breadth of rape culture, and it's so broad, it's everything from the little jokes we laugh at, the little memes and things that we let slide, and it could be as simple as, man, that's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be the guy that's like, I have a daughter, da 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 da, like, or you could be, but to just kind of have boundaries and be clear, that's not funny.
Yeah, that guy frustrates me too, though. The guy who's like, I would never do that. I have a daughter. It's like, even if you don't have a
Even if
daughter,
you don't have a daughter,
you should not do that.
you shouldn't do it, right? Human to human, you shouldn't do that to other people. But I'm just saying, let me tell you why I'm not as frustrated with those people anymore, because at this point, I just want any entry point. So if it's because you got a daughter and you feel, all right, well, let's take it from there and hopefully I can get you to someplace else. But I hear you. But what I need people to do, regardless of how you identify, because what happens is that the focus also becomes on men, right? If men could just be different, we wouldn't have rape. That's not true, because also women cause harm too. Women also um, can commit sexual assault, but we don't talk about trans folks, right? And I've seen so many women who uphold rape culture around trans women. So this is a learning curve for all of us. We really have to reshape how we think about sexual violence, how we talk about it, how we normalize it. You got people like the rapper, is he even a rapper? The guy, what's his name? Lil Boosie,
Oh yeah.
who's talking about his son and this kind of stuff that we normalize, or the other rappers who talking about, I lost my virginity at like that kind of stuff. We can't it's the normalization. So what I try to tell brothers is, be the difference, create really hard boundaries, and make sure the people around you know. Talk to the young people around you, because it may be too late for some of your peers, but
Mhm.
certainly talk to the young people around you, because we have to re-socialize our young people so that by the time they get to teenage years, this stuff is very normal for them. Like gender identity, boundaries and respect, all of those things are just normal for them. So it's not that they're rubbing up against the norm, it's just normal, right? You would not have, when I tell people all the time in an exercise, replace the word murder with rape. And I mean rape with murder, I'm sorry. So if you were talking in general and people were like, isn't that guy who they said, I think they said he raped a girl, didn't he? And people were like, maybe, but you know how that is.
Right.
If you said, didn't he say he murdered somebody? That's gonna give you a full pause. you know, you don't like murder. Did he murder somebody? We don't. We so normalize rape, and we immediately put excuses in our head and da da da. What happened? What's the circumstances? We got to know extra information. The other last bit I'm gonna say about this is, we have to move from the idea that sexual violence is an individual issue. right? So there's somebody in the community who has that experience of sexual violence. It's just about them. Oh, you heard what happened to so and so. I hope they're getting help. Oh, did she go to the police? Oh, did they get counseling? Right? We start thinking about individual solutions for that person. We don't think about community solutions. So when you hear about social justice issues of the day, you hear about gun violence, you hear about police violence, we hear about every climate change, you hear about all these different issues that we think of collectively affects us, but we don't add sexual violence to that because it's seen as an individual issue until we hear. So I use, you may have heard this in other interviews, but I use this to drive this home for people, because when you're in a community and you hear about gun violence, particularly against children, what you see is people rally around that as an issue. We do not want guns in our community. We want to keep our children safe. They connect their safety and the safety of their family to that particular incident, right? That makes sense to them. They can draw that connection. When you hear about sexual violence in the community, people repel from that. You hear a child is shot, we want to make sure people are safe. You hear a child is molested, people start whispering. You don't know if it's true or not. I don't know what happened. What are they going to do? Who is so and so? We don't feel collectively responsible for the well-being of that child or the safety of the community. And that has to change. We have to feel collectively responsible.
At some point, a lot of people tried to tie Me Too to cancel culture. What do you make of that? Or how can we just draw the wedge? Because it's not the same.
It's so not the same. I mean, if that was the case, we'd see a whole different, like a whole level of people being canceled, right? It's not the same. But asking for accountability or even consent is not the same as canceling people. And I think that I wish that people would have a little bit of nuance when they think about these things. What most people who experience sexual violence are looking for is somebody to be accountable for the pain, to be accountable for the trauma that the person experienced. That accountability can look like a lot of things. Because sexual violence, I also say this a lot, because sexual violence happens on a spectrum, accountability should happen on a spectrum.
Absolutely.
Right? So it doesn't always mean lose your job, go to jail, blah blah blah. But it does mean that somebody has to be to account for it in a very very simple thing, simple way to look at it. We have been socialized most of our lives, right? Just because we're Americans, excuse me, to think of everything in a crime and punishment framework, right? Law and order, crime and punishment. So this thing happened. These are the set of consequences you have. But at the end of the day, this is about harm and harm reduction. So there's not enough laws to cover the breadth of sexual violence. But like right now, if we was face to face and I was to smack you, you may not call the police, right?
No problem.
You're not gonna call the cops necessarily, and you may not even hit me back.
I would just go like this.
But but also,
Like, really
the
quick.
next time somebody says, "Do you want to interview Tarana Burke?" You're gonna be like, "No, because she smacked me last time," right? And nothing happened. She didn't apologize. She didn't. She no. She didn't help me out. Like I harmed you, and I wasn't accountable for that. And I'm being flippant a little bit, but the point is, whenever anybody is harmed, somebody should answer to that harm. So this is not about people being canceled. This is about people. This is how you get towards wholeness. That healing that we're talking about, this is a big step in that, and everybody deserves healing. So it's not trying to cancel people. But the other part that I just have to say, and I know people are gonna say whatever, there are also some people. This is not even about jail and going. There are some people who sometimes need to be outside of our community,
Absolutely.
right? Like that's just the truth. And I don't understand why we cape for certain people who cause harm inside of our community, even when they famous. Like this whole thing around R. Kelly and the debate and blah 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 is. I've had so many black men who just, I wrote about it in the book, blah blah blah, who attack me or who attack the Mute R. Kelly organizers around that. And I'm like, this is a singular man, right? Who wrote great songs, blah, 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 blah. But this is a singular man who does not represent Black men.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I know Black men. I know amazing Black men. In fact, most of the Black men I know are amazing. Even the most trifling of them are amazing, right? Just at their core. Good brothers who would never cause harm, not intentionally in the way this man does. Why is this the hill you want to die on?
Doesn't make
Sometimes they got to be outside the community, and that's okay.
That man needs to be somewhere getting some help. He's clearly out of his mind.
This is what I'm saying, and it's okay.
Now that I'm questioning you.
Now I'm questioning you.
I think something is wrong with you. I couldn't let you go away without asking you about the Supreme Court's decision to not block the Texas abortion ban. That's just been like, it's
Heavy.
one of the many things that have just thrown off
Yeah.
month of September that just began.
You know what? We've watched this happen, right? We kind of have, I mean, this is the track that has been happening for several years. This is sort of the culmination of a very carefully calculated plan from the right, from the ultra conservatives, the Christian right wing, whatever you want to call them. And it's kind of a lesson for those of us on the other side. People did not realize how tactical and organized they were. It is horrific, obviously. It is going to be such a monumental setback for reproductive rights. Of course, the least of us are going to bear the brunt of it. But I also hope it's a catalyst for us to double down on our organizing and be as tactical and strategic. We really have to raise the bar and sort of meet these people where they are and even exceed the kind of organizing they're doing, because they have laid the groundwork for this for years and years, and they finally got to this place. It just didn't happen overnight. It's not a fluke, and it's not just because Trump was president. It was going to happen. You know what I mean? They found an opportunity with Trump's presidency to kind of fast track it and get it in there with the Supreme Court justices. But it's sad that this is where we are, and we kind of in a really sad time in this country.
We have to keep fighting. It was amazing talking to you. I'm so glad we were able to have this conversation. Your book is brilliant. Can you please tell everybody where they can check in with you at and buy the book?
Oh, you can check in with me. Where, you mean like social media?
I mean, wherever they can hit you up at social media.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just playing. No, I mean, I'm really only on Instagram. I'm sometimes on Twitter. My name. I think it's my name. Tarana Janine on Instagram. Tarana Burke on Twitter. And the book is everywhere books are sold, but you should buy it from bookshop.org because that's where the independents get their money.